Microphones are cool, aren't they? You've got dynamics like the Shure SM7B, which sound great. They're chunky, reliable, but need a bit more gain than other microphones. They're not too fussed about getting thrown about the place like condensers are, just like the Shure SM57, and indeed the Shure SM58. They all have similarities, they're pretty robust, and you'll be doing pretty well to destroy one. You've got the Dynacaster from SE Electronics, which sounds relatively similar to the SM7B, except you have a few more options. You can give it a low boost, you can give it a high boost, or you can give it a low boost and a high boost at the same time. Plus it's got a red bit on the end, which makes it look proper sexy. You've got the Audix D6, which sounds like garbage on the voice, but really good on kick drum. Just like the Shure Beta 52A, which has a little less in the bottom end and sounds a bit less like garbage. Unlike the SE Electronics V-Kick, which actually sounds okay on a voice, which is proper weird. This has also got a few EQ options to help you out in the mix. I like kick drum microphones. Specific small microphones aimed at being used on drums like the Audix D2, the Audix D4, which is essentially the same thing with a bit more bottom end and a little bit redder, the SE Electronics V-Beat, and about a million others, none of which sound all that different on vocals because they're designed to be used on a drum nice and up close, where you get the benefit of the proximity effect. You have something much closer, so you get more bottom end. Here I've got the SE Electronics V7X, because why not? Being up nice and close gets you a decent amount of bottom end, that's that proximity effect. When you're further back you don't get as much of that bottom end and you get a bit more of a balanced sound, which can be more useful in different scenarios. It's pretty cool that, isn't it? You get that kind of response on large diaphragm condenser microphones as well, like this U87. It's old, it's vintage, it's sexy. It reminds people they're in a studio, so instantly makes them sound loads better, instantly makes them perform better, and instantly makes the artist and the engineer millions of pounds. That isn't true, of course, but it helps me justify the price tag to my wife. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got hundreds and hundreds of relatively cheap large diaphragm condensers, which none sound really that much better than each other, they all just sound a little bit different, and these days they all sound pretty good. Small diaphragm condensers are kind of cool like this. The Akg C451eb is kind of old, not as old as the Neumann, but still older than me. It's great, it's detailed, it's bright, it's good for getting in tight spots that you can't cram a large diaphragm condenser into. I'm having to be quite careful about how I speak into it because you get lots and lots of plosives in this kind of microphone. The capsule's relatively exposed. You can also get these angled heads for them, which means you can kind of right angle them a little bit, which are great but really expensive for what they are, and people on eBay always think they're worth much more than they actually are. SE Electronics make this SE8, which is cool on overheads. It's not quite as bright as the AKG, but that's what EQ's for, right? You often get stereo sets of small diaphragm condensers. This is the relatively inexpensive Sontronics STC1. I've got a stereo pair of these, one which I just found out is knackered when I was trying to record this video, and it sounds like this one's probably on its way out as well, which is handy. Yeah, that microphone just died completely. Brilliant. You can get different capsules for those though, not this one actually works, but you can get Omni, hypercardioid, all that kind of stuff, which is pretty cool. You've also got valve mics or tube mics to my American cousins, which are essentially condenser microphones but powered by that valve or tube. I don't have one here with me, but if I did, you'd see it looks pretty similar to a large diaphragm condenser. You can get small diaphragm valve mics as well. It gives you the opportunity to tell everyone on Facebook that you've got a valve mic, which is nice. And it gives you the opportunity to assume authority knowing that you have a valve mic. They can sound pretty good on the right kind of voice. Ribbon microphones are the same, I guess, except they're just figure of 8, so they pick up the same from the front and from the back. Just like this Neumann U87, you'll see that I'm now speaking into the back, but it's set to figure of 8, so it sounds like I'm speaking into the front. But the rejection on the sides is pretty good, and it works nicely if you're recording acoustic guitar and vocals at the same time. Polar patterns are really useful, so you should get to know them and get to know what your microphones have. If it works for your recording, great. If it doesn't, it's not the end of the world, but at least you got to exercise your switch finger. So in general, microphones, pretty cool. Use them for sounds and stuff. You won't regret it.